Here we are at downtown LA at XLive with Stephen Hayes, managing partner of D-Space Ventures. Stephen, what brought you into XLive today? I'm so glad to have you.
Yeah, I just, we have a lot of business here in Los Angeles because we're in the eSports space, and this is kind of the mecca for that space in the United States. We have a bunch of portfolio companies here, and so I always have an excuse to be in Los Angeles because of that. But specifically this conference, a lot of the folks I look up to in this industry, some of the investors, some of the media folks, some of the players, some of the team owners, were going to be here, so it just made sense for me to be here and engage in conversation, and at the same time learn from some of the great panels that they've put on here.
Yeah, look, I pay a lot of attention on what you do, and you're pretty vocal, especially in the VC realm of things. You got quite the portfolio. Tell us a little bit about who you're involved with in the esports ecosystem.
Sure. So, well, first and foremost, we've invested in about 7 portfolio companies in the esports space. One of those is Optic Gaming. So Infinite Gaming, which is the parent company of Optic, is a portfolio company of ours. And then outside of that, we're in 5 or 6 other startups, seed stage companies in the esports space. Mobalytics, which is a data analytics business, Fan AI, which helps organizations monetize their fan base in the esports space, and a number of others that do anything from build community to improve infrastructure to help people get better at playing games, monetize the fan base. Those are the kind of areas we're looking for in the esports space and where we're working right now.
There's been a lot of buzz about the new Arlington facility that opened up in Texas. What's your standpoint on that? I mean, it's a huge, massive facility, 100,000 square feet. Where do you see the space going with large-scale venues at that size?
I think it's going to happen in almost every major city. I mean, I think there's going to be dozens of these that you'll see pop up in the next 6, 12, 18 months. I think the local governments in those places see esports as an opportunity to do some regentrification in an area where maybe the convention center wasn't being used enough, or it wasn't being used for the right things, and they can turn it into this facility where there's a lot of demand. There's a lot of demand for people to show up and watch esports live in person. There's obviously more demand to watch it online, but when our team hosts a watching party in Houston, we have thousands of people that show up just to watch Overwatch on a screen in a warehouse with other people that like the same team. So, I don't think that the cities are making bad moves when they invest in infrastructure around esports.
What are you looking for? For what type of business, what type of organization, and what type of leader stands out to you?
That's a good question. So as far as the business, is kind of like I said with around esports, it's how do we build community? How do we engage people that are not engaged? How do we monetize those people? How do we make the experience better, make you better at playing your game, make the gameplay faster, make something better about how you interact with the space or with playing games? As far as the founders themselves, like you said, leadership is really important. I went to West Point. Leadership is a hot button for me. And one of the ways we kind of look for that is how have you performed in the past and things you've done? Where have you demonstrated excellence before? And that can be anything. I mean, if you won an underwater basket weaving contest in middle school and you were better than everyone else, that's great. Tell me about that. Tell me about why you like to win, why you're competitive, and why you're going to continue to be better than your peers wherever you're inserted, whether that's in this industry or that industry or another one. It's about this margin of excellence. Like, can you be better than everyone else? Because I don't believe that ideas are truly unique. I think there are some unique ideas, but the people who've made the most money and built the biggest businesses in certain industries weren't first. They were just the best leaders, and they managed teams, and they built teams, and they were able to take market share because of their leadership ability, not because they had the idea first.
That's incredible. What advice do you have for early leaders in the esports ecospace and how they deal with the growth and the growing pains and the consolidation across the space?
I think building relationships is really important. I think having relationships with the investors is one thing, but having relationships with the publishers, having relationships with the teams, having relationships with players, with streamers, and with fans, that's the most important thing to do early. There's all the blocking and tackling. There's the basic stuff, right? You've got to be able to, raise money and build a product and take it to market and get traction. But the relationships with the right people in the space are really important, and being able to see who those right people are is really important as well, because in esports right now, there's this influx of capital, there's an influx of people, there's a lot of people jumping up and down and saying, me too, I'm in esports, and raising the esports flag and trying to raise money under that or build a business. So it's important to be able to figure out who's really doing something real and who's just saying the word esports so they can, get attention.
Absolutely. We talked a little bit about the pro scene and your interest and involvement there. Where do you feel like the amateur audience fits in, and the amateur gamer, and maybe potentially that farm system fits in? What do you think?
I think that the amateur portion of this market is obviously the biggest portion of the market. And I think that if you look at what businesses are building in the esports space, people are building products, they're building solutions, they're building opportunities. But what they're really getting is eyeballs. They're getting engagement. And when you get engagement, you build a marketplace. And when you go out and capture millions and millions of people or email addresses or users or players or however you want to think about it, you're building an opportunity to create a marketplace. And in the esports space at the earliest ages, right? So like middle school and high school, when kids are getting to the point where they're starting to make their own decisions about what they want to wear, what they want to buy, what products they want to be associated with, what brands they like. What if you can go get those eyeballs at the earliest age possible and then own that marketplace, far before they can get a credit card and become an Amazon customer, or far before they can make this other decisions on their own. So esports and gaming startups are building businesses that attract these eyeballs and attract attention from consumers before other large marketplaces can get them. I ultimately think that gaming and esports at the amateur level builds the ultimate marketplace. And those who are going after that sort of thought process, I think, are going to have big wins.
When we talk about marketplace, we talk about youth and being able to get them brought into your ecosystem in marketplace. We're pretty much evaluating eyeball evaluation. Is that fair to say? How do you look at that as a VC when you're determining value of a platform or an opportunity that you're considering? Like, what is that worth? What is that data worth? What is that eyeball? What is that attention worth to you?
I think what is the eyeball worth in esports and gaming is the biggest question in the space. If you talk to senior folks at Activision or at Tencent or Riot, that's what they're going to tell you. They're going to say, why does Budweiser pay X per eyeball on Thursday Night Football, and they pay far less than that for the same eyeball during an esports competition? Why? And how do we close the gap, and when does the gap close? So that is something that is a question we're always trying to figure out how to answer, and any startup that we can find that is making an attempt to address that is something we would be interested in investing in, because in the long run, you think about what is a consumer doing when they sit in front of a CSGO tournament on a Sunday afternoon. They're watching it on one screen, they're probably playing on the other screen, or on the other screen they're in Reddit, or they're on Twitter, or they're engaging somehow. That's a highly engaged viewer. When I watch football on Thursday night, unless it's the Dallas Cowboys, I watch maybe 10 minutes of the whole game. I don't really pay attention. I certainly don't watch the commercials, and I'm not engaging with the brands that are advertising. So in esports, you have an engaged user that is watching on multiple screens or on devices where they can interact with the advertising. So in my opinion, Budweiser or whatever brand should be paying far more for the esports eyeball, and I think in the future they will.
So let's dig into platforms. Since we're talking about eyeballs and evaluation of that and what that's worth, what do you think about the dependence on the platforms in which we are beholden to today, and the transition potentially to an agnostic model where the platforms don't matter as much for content creators? They distribute out the tech, their content out, and they have ad tech on the back and that monetizes. But the platforms they go where the platforms are and the audience is. What do you think about that?
Yeah, it's interesting. There are startups right now that I've looked at, and some I've liked, some deals I've not been able to get into. I mean, there are startups there are businesses that are trying to take signal. So whether you're pushing your signal out through Twitch or YouTube or wherever it may be, and then split that signal and send it to one of dozens of streaming platforms. I think there's an opportunity there. I think once you take that signal and split it and send it to multiple platforms, you have a chance to wrap advertising around it, and I think that's going to become very valuable. So there will be this war for content and who gets to own it and where is it distributed that will play out over the next few years. If you stream on Twitter, does Twitter own that content? who gets to decide what the advertising looks like? Who gets to wrap the advertising? Is the advertising inside of the Twitter stream or the Twitch stream, or is it, is it on your feed? Is it an overlay? Is it who owns the advertising space, and who gets to decide where the advertising sits and who's the advertiser and how much they pay? Is it Twitch? Is it YouTube? Is it the redistribution software that pushes it out to 36 different streaming platforms? I think that's a great question to figure out.
As content creators, do you think we're vulnerable to the platforms bastardizing the economics and our revenue, essentially, and controlling the monetization of that content a little bit, beholden to people like Google and other platforms? Do you think we need a little separation?
I don't know about that. I mean, at the end of the day, there's two owners of IP in this space. The primary owner of IP is the game maker. The secondary owner of IP in the distribution business or in the entertainment business is the creator of that content. So I don't know how much leverage the Twitch or the BAM Tech or the Facebook or whoever's distributing streaming content, I don't know how much control they'll have because of the number of people that are providing outlets for streaming content. So eSports as a whole, to me, is a content distribution channel. A gaming team like Optic or whatever it may be, whatever large entities that have lots of eyeballs, they're really content distribution platforms. So I think that the content is being democratized. How it gets to the viewer is being democratized. So I don't think that owning the channel will be the primary source of control. I think the content creators will own it, and I think the IP will sit with the game makers, and somewhere between the content creators and the game makers will be the decision of who gets to wrap what advertising where and who gets to pay what for it and how it gets to different viewers.
Two more questions. Thank you, Stephen. Let's talk about production quality. Tools, resources that are out there to enhance the experience or the production value. Look at Doc and what he does. He puts a little extra, emphasis on his production quality. Do you think there's something there that maybe we can take things to the next level for streamers, for content creators, to create a more, a higher quality production per se? Do you think there's something there for that?
Yeah, I think what you'll see. Some of the really good content producers right now are they're really just good at formatting and cleaning up their video and making it high quality production. For the live streamers, there's really not a lot of that. What's the opportunity? I think with the streamers, you can think about the content creators as businesses. And I think you can think about the services that you would provide to them as B2B services. And I think there's a lot of opportunity to build B2B services that make content creators better at creating, producing, and distributing their content. Is it specifically a tool that makes the production value higher? Maybe. What about a CRM? What about a database that helps that helps Doc know who's watching his stream, and do they prefer Vans or Reeboks or Nikes, and should he go sell one of those folks an advertising spot on his stream? I think there's opportunity there. I think there'll be tools built around that, and I know there are tools being built around that.
Do we need a B2B platform that's going to scrape that data? Because the back end, we're not getting that, right, from platforms right now to be able to provide that transparency to the content creator. Does that tool need to be able to capture that data, scrape it, and then give it to the content creator real time? Or do you think the platform is going to open up a bit more?
I think no one platform can do that alone. It'll have to be probably a B2B service or business, because Twitch only sees so much of my viewership. They don't know specifically what I'm watching on YouTube. They don't know specifically what I'm watching on Facebook. They don't know specifically what I'm watching on any other platform. And as content gets restreamed, I think they'll even have a harder time knowing exactly what I'm watching. So I think it's an independent service provider that comes along and says, I can figure out who your fan base is, and I can figure out what other consumer products they buy, and then I can help you go to those consumer brands and sell sponsorship to them, or go to their competitors and say, hey, guess what, Nike? I have 3 million Reebok buyers sitting in my audience on Sunday afternoon watching this broadcast. You should probably advertise here.
Thank you, Stephen. Last question. What's next for Deep Space Ventures? What's on the calendar? I know you just exited in March, one of your companies. What's going on?
We sold a business in March, which was great, legal tech business. We have another business that, fingers crossed, is closing end of April, an exit. And then I'm closing another investment tomorrow here in Los Angeles, seed stage company, not in the esports space, but exciting nonetheless. So for us, it's just we're hungry for more early stage investment. I mean, we want to do probably 10 new deals a year, and that's on top of all of our follow-ons. We'll probably end up doing 10 to 12 follow-ons each year as the portfolio gets bigger. The goal for Deep Space Ventures in the long run is to make 100 initial investments. Some of those will fail, some of those will exit, some of those will do neither. They'll just kind of survive. But we think if we can go out and make 100 smart investments over a 10-year period, and if we can continue to have the hit rate that we're having, then we should be in a good position to not just drive a good return, but have enough capital to redeploy back into the ecosystem, back into founders, back into resources, back into helping other people along the way. So that's the big plan. But the next step is closing deal number 20 tomorrow.
Good luck.
Yeah, thank you.